Legend tells of an inexperienced game dev who went into his first project without doing enough research. That game developer is me. And it could be you. Well, at least that's what I'm trying to help you avoid. But yeah, making your first game is definitely no walk in the park. You will make mistakes and you will learn from them. But this video just sort of goes over the process of making my own first game and sort of serves to inform you on how you can make the most out of your own experience. So a little background, me and my friend Ace fully released our first game called Pogo Rocket just a little while ago. It's available on Steam right now, so I mean, check it out in the description if you want. Yeah, we programmed it in GameMaker. Probably would have been better in Unity, but I digress. I think doing Pogo Rocket, we really learned a lot in the process. We definitely made a lot of mistakes, and I think that was a good thing because now we can sort of learn from them for our next game. And hopefully you all can too. So I'm going to bring up some of the main points in no particular order. It's really easy to come up with an elaborate and grand idea for your first game because there's just so many different ideas you have and you want to do them all. But starting small is going to be way more beneficial for you as a game developer. Start with a super simple concept, you know, something like Pac-Man or Mario. I mean, really, you could even think about making a mobile game first, since those are typically much smaller in scope. But you should aim for your game to be a quick and simple experience. Don't start with an open world RPG with an inventory system, you know, enemies, 3D models. Just start small. You will learn much more and much faster if you completely finish multiple smaller projects first before tackling something bigger. And if you're making your own games completely by yourself, then you need to get experience with all aspects of game development. Making small projects sort of lets you work through each of those individual processes quicker and makes the next one much easier. You will have time to make your more elaborate projects in the future, but do that after you have more experience first. Pogo Rocket took us like 2 years to make, which, to be fair, we weren't working on the game for most of that time, but try to pump yours out way faster. I think one big mistake we made with Pogo Rocket was the fact that we didn't really have a super solid idea of how we wanted the game to look from the beginning. It's sort of easy to put that off until later because you want to work on all the fun things like programming, gameplay mechanics, but I think it's really important to jump on that early. Having a solid vision of your art style early helps in multiple different ways. I think it saves you a lot of time from having to go back and redo old art, which is something that came up a little bit in Pogo Rocket. Redoing art is a waste of time, so, you know, try to do it mostly right the first time. Obviously, it's never going to be absolutely perfect in the beginning, but minimizing extra work redoing it is always great. And also, having a solid art style down from the beginning just makes it easier to make the rest of the game. Having that sort of visual foundation makes it easier to come up with ideas and implement features that fit better. I think we started to almost add things just to have more things rather than thinking about whether it would make sense for the visual identity of the game or not. Marketing, I think, was the biggest thing we lacked with Pogo Rocket. Truth is, marketing is pretty hard, and I think it's one of the biggest reasons why publishers exist. Marketing takes a ton of time. You have to be very consistent about posting updates and content with your game on social media. And honestly, it's just something I didn't really have much time for. Marketing also ties into the game itself in the form of adding content that is marketable too. So it's important to start planning that early on so you can sort of develop with that in mind. Like, I really can't stress this point enough. I mean, even if you have an amazing game, it doesn't really matter if no one knows it exists. I would almost put in equal importance on marketing as I would with the game itself. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's going to take a lot of time, but I think it really will pay off. It's something we didn't do for Pogo Rocket, and yeah, I've yet to make one measly penny on that game. And of course, it's my own fault, but would have been nice knowing that ahead of time. It's really easy to get into game development and think, you know, oh, I've been playing games for so long, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to make the perfect game and it's going to be really fun. But honestly, gaming skills don't always translate super well to game development skills. Really, the two can be completely different from each other. At times, game design is way more technical and complicated than it appears. And it's really more about consistency than your gaming knowledge. It's easy to identify something that's fun, and of course, being familiar with games will help you make them. But understanding exactly why it's fun and how to emulate that in your own original way is pretty hard. And I think the main thing to take away from this point is that you're more than likely going to suck at making games if you're just starting out. And that's completely normal. Don't set up the expectation for your first game to be super successful, because it rarely ever happens. Your first game really should just be purely about learning and understanding the process first and foremost. If I could go back, I think I would make Pogo Rocket free, because honestly, just having some fun, learning, and trying to build up a reputation first, I think is way more important than expecting an instant success. As a wise orange dog once said, sucking at something is the first step. That's being sort of good at something. It's really easy to get into game development, thinking that you're going to make a lot of money. And if you have a massive success, then that's true. There's all sorts of games, for example, Undertale, millions, lots of money, right? But focusing on money is definitely the wrong way to go about it. The biggest thing you should focus on starting out is improving your own abilities as a game developer and getting your name out there, building up a following. Really all of these are core components that will eventually lead to you making money if you work on those first. Money with game development is better as sort of an effect of your work rather than the goal. Make the best game you can and become the best developer you can first. I would honestly also suggest making your first game free. Yeah, you won't make any money, but if you're really in it for the long haul, then it will pay off. Free games have no barrier to entry, and that makes it way easier to market, first off. And that makes it way easier for you to get more players. I think it's really making your first game free, at least, is really an investment towards more successful projects in the future. And there's also the fact that you don't owe anything to your players. You don't have to think, oh, well, I have to add enough content to justify the price tag. You can just develop the game at your own pace, and I think you'll learn a lot more that way. I also think keeping a steady pace with game development is super important. At first, making Pogo Rocket, I was pretty excited. I was working at it every day and adding tons of stuff, learning things, and that's all good stuff. But the problem was that I hit it so hard that I then created this expectation that I had to work that hard every day. And I think that sort of killed progress on the project for a while. I got burnt out multiple times. I sort of took like a huge hiatus from what I was working on, which is a terrible thing to do. First off, taking a massive break like that, when you come back to it, is really hard to get back into the swing of things. You also just forget a lot of the code and how you went about implementing things. It really takes a lot of work to start re-understanding the project. That concept is also just super common thing with any form of code too. You might understand it all now, but in 4 months, you probably won't. You'll be a completely different person. So here's what to do. Make a consistent work schedule and set it up so that you'll have the time and energy to work on the project. It's way better to slowly and steadily work towards the finish line instead of sprinting and getting tired early on. Last and definitely not least, it's vital to understand that it always seems easier to work on something than it really is. For example, with Pogo Rocket, I thought it would be a fun little feature to have local multiplayer. And I thought to myself, well, that shouldn't take too long. I don't have to deal with networking or anything, so let's do it. And that was probably one of the biggest mistakes I made with that game. It always takes way longer than it seems, so you need to focus on what's important for the project first. It's great to come up with ideas for your game, but I think a good finished game is better than an unfinished perfect game, that is. Focus on going from point A to B. Start with your core gameplay loop, lay out the main features you want, and get the main core of the game finished. I like to think of game development as sort of like a painting. You need to start blocking out the general shapes, and then you can come back later and add in the detail. I think the foundation of your game, the core gameplay, is way more important than all the extra features you want to add. So here's a general rule of thumb. If an idea doesn't support your core gameplay in any capacity, then just don't add it. It'll make your game harder to finish, you'll take way too long, and you'll probably get burnt out. Once you have your core gameplay in place and player can begin and finish your game. Then you can go back and start adding in all that extra detail. So yeah, those are just some of the main points I think that really summarize some of the hard lessons I learned making Pogo Rocket. Now, obviously, I'm not the most experienced game developer by far. I still have a ton to learn, but hopefully that gives you a more solid idea of what you should aim for when starting out with game development. And if you're someone with more experience than me watching this, then please feel free to correct me in the comments or give me just some of your own advice. Because as much as I would have loved to know all this before I started, I think there's even way more about game development that I missed in this video that I just don't know about yet. And, you know, I would love to hear about it, so please let me know. Yeah, if any of you have questions about anything, really, then feel free to ask me down below. I'll make sure to reply to everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for watching, and if you're interested in a new project I'm starting soon, then stay tuned. But have fun and good luck with your own projects.